Hello everybody and welcome back to Olive Boy Pens. A couple weeks ago I showed you guys these two pens, the Pilot Elite and the Pilot E95S. Two cute little Japanese pocket pens with a long, short body design that make for a really nice pocket pen, and I really like them. So I thought I would show you the higher end version of these two. Today I've got for you the Pilot M90 from the 1970s and the 2008 re-release, the Pilot M90, which was a limited edition. These are a very similar pen to an Elite in that they are a very similar form factor, long cap, short body, but the main difference here is the nib and section, which in this case are the same piece. The main selling point of the Mu and the M90 is this wild integral nib, which means that the section and nib are one continuous piece of stainless steel, which I think is pretty swell. And the larger pen community would also agree with me. There's somewhat of a cult following around these two pens with, pretty high prices being thrown around for both of them, though interestingly higher for the modern re-release, and we can touch on that a little bit later on. But I'm excited to get the chance to handle these two special pens and give you guys a closer look at the differences between them. So let's get right into that. Alrighty, so let's take a look at these two honestly very similar metal pocket pens. Starting as always with the vintage one, the M701 from 1976. So this is a pretty small pen, being a long, short style Japanese pocket pen. It's 119 millimeters long capped, and then uncapped it's 104. So not really very usable as an uncapped pen, but of course it becomes very usable once you post it. It's pretty thin as well. With a lot of that being due to the fact that it's a pocket pen. It is, of course, all stainless steel, which is pretty gorgeous, as you can tell. And as you may be noticing here, the main selling point is that integral nib. So yeah, the whole section and nib are, one piece of stainless steel with a slit and a breather hole cut into it, and then a feed, of course, on the underside. I don't know what the deal is with the coating on the feed here. It seems to have bubbled over time, which suggested to me that it might be urushi, but that also seems kind of crazy, so I'll have to look into that. The cap stays on, not via a click, but kind of like a tension system. It doesn't really click into place, but it is, it's not going anywhere fast. So I don't feel insecure using it in a pocket. And then the filling system is accessed in the same way as like an Elite would, where you screw off the bottom part of the body. And you can use, Pilot Con 40, 20, or 50, as well as Pilot cartridges. So, very, very useful for everyday carry. Pretty standard pen stuff. And then the clip up top is not hinged. It's just, a bent metal style clip that goes all the way up to the top of the cap, where you've got this little plastic black disc. Not a lot to talk about in this pen. Not a whole lot of features. Lastly, you get the nib size marker and the date code, which tells you when the pen was made, which is kind of cool. And then, of course, it says Pilot on the front of the cap. This pen is a decent weight for its size. It's 21 grams. It's an all-metal pen, so that makes sense. It feels substantial and very solid. The M701 is, again, a very similar pen. It is the same length, roughly, actually, sorry, exactly, they're the same size. However, it is a good bit thicker, whereas the original Mew is 11.5 millimeters in width. This is 13 at its widest point. And that reflects in the weight as well. It's actually 6 grams heavier, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're looking at a pen of this size, this pen actually does have a decent heft to it. As you can tell here, the capping mechanism is a little bit different. The cap goes over that little section connector piece and kind of confirmingly clicks, which is actually a satisfying feeling. And of course, underneath, you have that very similar integral stainless steel nib. This one happens to be a medium, which is a little bit less common. When you post this also, it does the same clicking that you get when you cap it. However, it does kind of wiggle still, side to side and up and down. It's not the most solid feeling thing in the world, even though the click is satisfying. But, you know, I won't harp on it too much. It's not that bad. The feed is in great shape. It's a plastic feed, like most modern pens. This is a modern pen by all standards. And then the filling system, again, you can't really do that with the cap on this one, I guess. You unscrew the back, same cartridges, same converters, not anything really to report. And yes, this is a medium. It is marked here with a date code as well. And finally to the clip, which is, I think, kind of the biggest difference between the two. It's longer, which I guess makes sense because it's a little bit more proportional to the thickness of the pen. But it has the engraving of the name of the pen up at the top here, M90. It has this little blue jewel, which I don't really get. I don't know really what it's saying. It might have some significance design-wise or symbolically, but I think it's kind of cheesy, and I don't really know why they added it, because this is a very restrained design, and it just seems like an unnecessary addition if you're going to remake the same pen. So, let's look at something that I'm sure you guys are interested to see. How well do these two pens write? This one is currently inked with some kind of gray. I believe it's a Pilot. So, as is often the case in this series, we will be starting with the vintage Mew, which has a fine, again, integral stainless steel nib. So, let's get to it. This is the Pilot Mew 701, 1976, and it's a fine. So, this nib is okay. It's just kind of fine and not scratchy or anything, just kind of feedbacky, a little bit dry. Occasionally it will skip. I think it's just because it isn't meant for necessarily this writing angle, maybe something a little bit higher. It's just not the most exciting nib in the world. It doesn't have too much character to it. It definitely gets the job done, but I wouldn't enjoy writing with this for a very long time. It really doesn't feel like it offers that much benefit over, a much, much, much cheaper steel nib. However, probably pretty easy to draw, huh? Just kind of, that's basically it. Though I guess it has some kind of shaping there. I don't know. I mean, I feel like you're maybe not buying this pen for, hardcore writing or the writing experience itself, but it really is nothing special. It doesn't excite me really in any way other than when I look at it in my hand, I'm like, ooh, pretty. But that's kind of it. It's just kind of a boring, dry, stiff, fine nib with not a whole lot of character to it. Let's see if the modern one does anything better. I will note that this nib has been worked on. I believe it was previously bent, and then it went to Kirk Spear at Pen Realm, who I've frankly heard mixed reviews of. I haven't tried a lot of his work. I've heard good things. I've heard not so good things, but we'll see how this one writes. It's a medium. It's a Pilot M90. Already, this one is a lot smoother. I don't know if that's because of the nib work or just because it's a bigger size or if it's a different nib, but it's still not particularly special in any way. It's just kind of a medium, like a Japanese medium. It feels very similar to other steel Japanese mediums that I've tried, which is kind of, a little dry, smooth, but, without a lot of character. And in terms of the feel of the pen, I'm coming around to the thickness of the M90 over the Mu. The Mu's a little bit harder to hold on to for a longer period of time, so I understand maybe why they went with a bigger body on the new one. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't hate it. I could see myself using it, but at the end of the day, I think I just prefer my Elites. They have much nicer feeling nibs, being gold and all that, and can be had for a lot cheaper. So yeah, that pretty much does it on the writing performance and body characteristics of these two pens. Let's get over to my opinions. So, how do I feel about the Mu and the M90? Well, first things first, just talking about the Mu by itself for a moment. I think that this pen is a little bit overrated, but also lives up to the hype in its own way, if you know what you are hyped about it for. Like, if you are going to this pen, you're going to be like, oh, I'm going to write every day with this pen. It's going to be sick. It's going to write so well. You might be a little bit disappointed. It is, after all, a pretty stiff, pretty fine, pretty dry steel nib. I've had Pilot Metropolitans and Pilot Kakunos, $15, $20 pens that write about as well as this. Like, not enough to justify this pen being 10 times more expensive. However, if you're looking at this pen on the basis of design and aesthetic and the integral nib, frankly, then you're going to get exactly what you're paying for, because that's the main thing about this pen is it's just one piece of steel. It's super sleek. It's super well made. Feels really nice in the hand. Super durable. You're going to get what you want because that's what this pen is. It's just not the most spectacular writer in the world. And there's not much to be done about that because they only made them in like fine and medium, and the mediums are super rare, and the fines are, a pretty standard Japanese fine stiff nib. So just manage your expectations in terms of that. The M90, on the other hand, has some of the advantages of the original one in that, it's pretty similar in design. I feel like just the angles are kind of off. The body doesn't taper across the whole silhouette like the vintage one does. So there's kind of like that interruption at the cap, which, most people won't care about. That's just kind of a weird little me thing. But I also am not a huge fan of the finial, that kind of cheesy blue jewel that really doesn't need to be there. And then, after all that is said and done, the nib still doesn't write that well. It's not bad. It's not offensive to me. It's just not that exciting. So then you're stuck with, maybe I would say personally to me, a very slightly worse pen than the original Mu for a lot more money, because they only made 9,000 of these, and then, for the whole world market, and then only a certain amount came to the US. So you're going to pay maybe twice the price of an original Mu, which at that point, I don't really get. That's completely lost on me. For that amount of money, you could get a black striped Mu, which is like my personal dream pen. I would love to own one day. Better pen in almost every respect, except for, rarity. So, yeah, I would have, I totally get why this pen was re-released. And I'm sure at the time, with a probably around $200 price point back in the day, if this was a new pen today for $200, I would say buy for sure. but it's not. It's like a $400 pen or more. Whereas these you can get for $200-250 if you want like a nice clean one. And that's going to be up to you if you want to pay that much for a okay writer with a really beautiful design. But hey, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just here to tell you what I think. And that is pretty much the sum up of what I think about the two Mews. The Mew and the M90. So, I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on these two more Japanese pocket pens. I've got some more Japanese pens on the way. I've got some European pens on the way, some more vintage and modern. Hope you guys are enjoying this series because it's going to keep coming for a little bit. And if you're excited to see some more, subscribe, like, shoot a comment if you want some other video suggestions. I would love that. It's always helps me in my creative process. And yeah, follow me over at Olive Boy Pens over on Instagram if you want to see more kind of smaller content. It's kind of fun. I like interacting with people over there too. So yeah, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.